Now, as Phil and Kirsty know, finding the right home is always a challenge for a family, but so too is finding the right school.
Yeah, and this has certainly been the case for Carrie and her adopted son, Nathan. Now, we asked them to explore a recent survey which suggests many adopted children in the UK are struggling to integrate into mainstream education.
Go, Master Grant.
Yummy, yummy, yum, yum.
Today marks a new adventure for our 8-year-old son, Nathan. He's starting his first full day at his new school.
I can't send Nathan to school if I can't see him. There he is.
Nathan was 2 years old when we adopted him, and at the time we were never under any illusion that things would be easy.
Who was made in my heart?
I love you.
You were made in my heart.
You were made in my heart.
You don't take a child away from their parents unless it's a really good reason. So often they've been abused, neglected, and these children are really traumatised. And that trauma is what then later begins to make for behavioural issues. Trying to fit into mainstream education can be really difficult for adoptive children.
And sadly, that's what happened with Nathan at his previous school.
Look at me, I'm not doing my job. I'm the page turner.
You know, in Nathan's case, someone knocks his building tower over, he'll punch them. And unfortunately for Nathan, it was those kinds of situations that meant he was constantly being taken out of class. The parents started a WhatsApp group so that they could speak about Nathan. And then someone advised them that the way to get the best result was to get a petition to have Nathan excluded from the school. So it was decided that he would have to go to a different school, a specialist school, and that wasn't our choice.
So I want you to have the best day ever.
Each adopted child has their own story. While many won't struggle with behavioural issues and sail through their education, a recent survey suggests adopted kids are still 20 times more likely to be permanently excluded from school than their classmates. I'm keen to meet other adoptive parents with similar experiences to us, so I've come to Beech Lodge School in Berkshire, which specialises in supporting adopted children.
Right, can you think of a silly sentence?
No, but I can't.
It was founded by Daniela Shanley after her 14-year-old son Dom was excluded from 3 different schools.
What was it like at school for Dom?
He was full of anxiety. He was a very dysregulated little boy, and underpinning all that was attachment difficulties.
What was he doing behaviourally?
He would throw things, he would spit, he would be violent to other children.
My son's teacher said, this isn't the right school for your son, and there isn't a right school for your son.
Really, the system beat me.
Same here.
So that's why I set up the school.
How many do we need of those?
4 of the heart.
Tell me some of the different things, why it's different from mainstream.
We group children in cohorts according to emotional age rather than actually chronological age. Most of our classrooms are very low stimulation. We also have a speech and language therapist to help them develop relationships.
I want to hear from the kids what difference they think this approach makes to them.
If I had something inside me, I couldn't go and tell someone, so I keep it inside me, it just get me really angry and worked up.
So what's it like in this school?
If I'm upset with something, I can go and talk to the teacher and they understand.
It's easier to make friends and people don't like judge you as much, and there's less bullying than there was at my last school.
The teachers understand you more, you feel more free, you don't feel trapped.
We don't know how separating our kids from their peers now will affect their future. Despite this, adoptive mums Anna and Rachel still feel it's the best option for their children.
My son wouldn't cope in a mainstream school, so what do? He couldn't cope there. Here he can cope. And all those social skills, they're coming.
I tried to mix it up out of school by taking George to different groups, going swimming, going to CrossFit, doing things with other children.
Do you feel that schools are under too much pressure to meet the needs of these children?
Yes. How can one teacher be an expert in all those children's different needs?
Colborne Primary in Birmingham is one mainstream school trying to tackle the issue head-on.
That's where you get all the attachment difficulties. That's where you get their inability to regulate their emotions.
Head teacher Stuart Guest has been training his staff on attachment and trauma for the last 4 years.
So as a school, we've introduced a number of attachment-friendly approaches, such as not having behaviour charts at the front of the classroom, which can induce shame, having a homework approach that enables children to succeed and not berating them if they don't bring it in. Since we've introduced these approaches, we've noticed a significant improvement in behaviour, and a reduction in the use of exclusions.
Back home, I'm keen to find out how Nathan's day went at his new school.
How was it?
Good.
Yeah, what did you do? I guess the big question is, the 18 children in Nathan's school, 30 children in the school that I went to see today. What about the thousands of others?
Well, thanks so much to Carrie and Nathan. Good news, Nathan has settled in really well and he's made tons of friends, so it's all going well for him.
Yes, thank you both for making that film for us. We know they're watching at home. Now then, we are joined by Becky White, the Schools Development Officer from Adoption UK. Now, Becky, the results from that survey, I mean, they are shocking. So as far as you're concerned, I mean, is there a key point, when you start looking for a solution to this?
Yeah, what we know is that around 3/4 of children who are adopted have experienced abuse and neglect in the early part of their lives. So for us at Adoption UK, we're very concerned to raise awareness of this, to raise awareness of the fact that the early experiences of children change how they develop and grow, so that even many years later their foundations are different from children who had a secure, nurturing childhood. That in school that might come out as surprising behaviours that you can't explain, but if you have understanding of attachment, understanding of trauma and the impacts of that, it becomes very clear why that behaviour is happening, and then there are some strategies you can use to help the environment be more supportive for the child and to help them to increase their tolerance and to enable themselves to be able to manage their own emotions and their own behaviour. So awareness
right across
in education and right across
Yeah.
society, really, that this is an invisible disability, really.
And it was said in the film, actually, it's very hard for one teacher in a classroom to deal with all the needs of the different children. But how can mainstream schools ensure that they are as equipped as possible then to deal with this issue?
There's quite a lot of training available on attachment and trauma. What we've found is that the kind of techniques that will help and support children who've experienced early trauma and neglect, they'll do no harm to any child and will be positively beneficial to a lot of children. There are 70,000 children in care in the UK. Many of those children will have experienced abuse and neglect and will benefit from this. So we'd recommend schools seek out training, come to organisations like Adoption UK and look at the resources we've got for schools. But at Adoption UK, we would really want to call for this to be included as part of initial teacher training, that when teachers graduate and are ready to begin their first year of teaching, they already know this stuff.
Yeah.
Because it affects a significant number of children.
And actually, it'll probably help generally as well with their teaching and what they're observing from the children.
Yes, and we know that teachers are very good at holding these things in mind. Teachers are able to manage lots of different needs in the classroom, and we believe that teachers, this could be a key for a lot of children.
And Becky, what do you say to adoptive parents then? Because it must be heartbreaking for them. I mean, they're doing the very best for the child anyway, and yet there they are, they're turning up at the school gates and just keeping everything crossed that their child's going to be able to get through the day.
Yes, and undergoing the walk of shame to the head teacher's office. And many children are not adopted quite as young as we'd imagine. The average age is around 3.5, so some parents are adopting their children, then almost immediately taking them to school. And having to make that choice of which school will be the best, we would recommend broadening your horizons as to what you think the ideal school for you might be. A small, nurturing village school might be good, but at the same time, a bigger school with a broader intake of students might have more resources and more experience to deal with a child with some unusual behaviours. We would suggest that you visit the schools, don't just go off the Ofsted report, go to the school, get a feel for the school, talk to the staff. Tell them that your child is adopted and might need extra help. And if they say something like, oh, no, I'm sure it'll be fine, then you might want to consider looking elsewhere. If they come back to you and say, oh, we've had training in that, or, oh, yes, we understand something about attachment, then you've got something you can work with there and you can begin a conversation, a dialogue with the school.
Yeah, and you're an adoptive mum yourself to 2 children.
Yes.
It shouldn't put people off, the whole schooling thing, because it is tricky, but there are ways around it.
It is tricky. We've got some wonderful stories of Adoption UK members who found a great school for their children, and their children are thriving and doing really well. There are challenges for adoptive parenting, but I think if you go into that with your eyes open, you're prepared in the initial stages to seek out support where it might be found through organisations like Adoption UK or other organisations that are out there, and you've got your eyes open to what's out there, then yes, adopted families can thrive, adopted children, care experienced children can do well and succeed.
Thank you, Becky, so much. Thank you.
Thanks.